I'm not sure whether philosophy will be a big help tonight, but I do think it's important to try to understand the world around us. And so tonight, right as was mentioned, we're talking about ambient IQ, and I think the first question we have to answer is, what is ambient IQ? And there we go, on to the slides. So I think the easy answer, right, is that this is kind of what technology has been promising us for a long time. This is the easier life, where technology understands what I need and brings me the solution. But I think we actually need to understand what it means in its components. And I think that the components that make this understandable and that will hopefully help us understand as a panel through the various panelists what each person is doing is ambient IQ is a combination of new types of data, new actions, and of course intelligence. So let's take a look at that a little bit deeper. So for new data, this is sensors, right? This is connected devices, but I also think, and I see on the panelists that we have a few people wearing Fitbits or the various other Jawbone devices, right? And so I think here's an example of collecting new types of information that was never available before. This is my movements, this is my running, this is my exercise. With things, this is a device that I actually have at my home, a scale. You can see my weight go up and down. I think the interesting part is day-to-day, right? This is very boring data. But when you're actually looking at it across a long period of time, 1 year, 2 years, you start to see that I lose weight as summer comes along, and I gain weight as the summer ends. So that's one interesting thing. And then last, I think that we have a collection of new sensors that are unlocking types of information that we've never had before. And one of the panelists here is from the Automatic team. I think Automatic is a great example of this. Automatic connects with your car. This is one of the few devices that you had maybe when you started college, but you now still have, right? The same car, those things last about, what, 10 years, is that right? Yeah. And this is unlocking data that previously only your mechanic had access to. And now you have access to it, you have a log of it, and you can work with it online. So that's new data. I think new actions, I think that here are some that we've all read about in the press, right? Nest is a great device, or makes great devices from thermostats to smoke detectors. I think we all can understand that one. I think then we see things like sockets, which are internet controlled, so I can, for our office down the street in Palo Alto, we actually have Christmas lights that turn on when anyone from our team gets close because we're using the location sensor in our phone. And then when all of our teammates leave, the Christmas lights turn off. And then we see things like door locks. And then my last favorite one is actually something called the CloudWash. It's an internet-connected washing machine. And you guys should all look this up later tonight. I think it's an incredibly cool device. It's still in the very early stage and very promising look at this future. But I think that when we start thinking about both connected devices and ambient IQ or ambient intelligence, this is the type of stuff that will be possible. Last, I think, is actually what is this intelligence, right? It's connecting this data with some sort of software and some sort of insight into how we're going to make an intelligent experience. I tried to think of an example of what's a company that we're all familiar with and a device, an experience that we've probably all used that actually represents ambient intelligence or ambient IQ. And I think Waze is a great example of this. It's a piece of software right on your iPhone or Android phone where you can input information about the traffic that you're seeing, accidents, where are the police hiding on Highway 280. And then for me, as a driver, while I'm driving along, I'm getting alerts about this information. Hey, there's an accident. Here's how you should reroute to go somewhere else. So now I think we kind of understand what is ambient IQ. Now, why are we actually talking about this today? I think here's the answer, right? We're looking at connected devices and looking at an explosion of them that's about to happen, right? So we're at about 14 billion now, and the analysts from Cisco are projecting 50 billion and 75 billion in 2020 and 2030 respectively. I think now if you actually think about that in a per user basis, I think it gets a little bit more interesting, right? Today we're at about a device per person in the world. And I think if we continue on, we're going to see that continue to grow. And I think it actually gets more interesting if you think about it, how many people are actually connected to the internet, right? We have about 2.5 billion, 3 billion today. And if you think about it that way, it's a lot more devices per person. But what does this explosion in devices means? It means an explosion in new pieces of data and new actions that are possible. So how are you going to actually manage all of that, right? That's what ambient IQ is all about. So in terms of what's changed, right, why is this possible today? I think that it's actually a simple answer, right? Ubiquitous internet. When I created this slide, I was thinking, well, this is kind of a boring answer. But I think that it's really the truth, right? I think that we think about our routers at home as the devices that we're using to get internet service, or our smartphones as things that we use to play whatever the new app is or play some game. But really, they're really just connectors to the internet that are enabling us to send data online, send data up to servers and log that data and create new pieces of action and new insights. I think that both what we'll see with Electric Imp, what they're doing, leveraging kind of routers that are in your house or anywhere else, and then what we're seeing with Automatic are another great example of how people are taking just the normal ubiquitous internet and that availability and being able to create new data points in the cloud that then the software can work on and create ambient IQ, ambient intelligence. So that's one part. I think that the second part is actually the ease of production, right? The fact that I can have an idea, I can present that idea to the world through Kickstarter, collect enough funds, and then go over and actually produce this new piece of technology that I'm super excited about. That, to me, is incredibly powerful, right? And I hope this is one of the questions that we'll get into in the panel. But understanding how can I actually take my idea from concept to actual production and get it into people's hands, that is very exciting. I think that's actually drastically different than what was available even 2-3 years ago. So before we get into the next panelist, I think one of the questions I have here is, where is the platform? And what I mean by that is, both as an engineer and as a consumer, where am I going to see the easy thing that allows me to build my product and get the leverage of a platform? And then as a consumer, what's going to help me actually have a great experience? And what I mean by that is, how are they going to leverage all of these devices that I have, right? If we're talking about 50 billion devices that are going to be connected in 2020, that assumes that I'm probably going to have devices from 10 or 20 companies, right? And so how is all that information, all of that data, my weight from various scales, my Fitbit or my Jawbone device, how's all that data going to be combined together? Where's that platform that's going to create a great experience for me as the end user? So hopefully that gets us started, a little bit about what is Ambient IQ. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hugo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hugo from Electric Imp. I'm an engineer, so forgive me for my presentation style. In advance, just get that. So just going to say kind of how I got to be doing Electric Imp. A very, very brief history. Things I've worked on. I've always been into communications. I started in the 80s when I was but a teenager. I made bulletin board software. People remember bulletin boards? Yeah, I still remember my FidoNet address, is how geeky I am. I sold bulletin board software. I love communication and computers, the first ARM processors, great stuff. I did lots of other bits and pieces. I worked on the Oracle network computer. I believed that thin client computing was actually really good, and it's sort of kind of catching on. Chromebooks, pretty much slightly fatter than the last thin client root wave, but still pretty thin. Everything else got fatter, that's why I think. And made various embedded devices, network devices, made a network webcam when I was at college. And I made an MP3 player. It's a few years before the iPod, actually, and we made a Linux-powered in-car MP3 player with Ethernet, which is obviously essential for a car. But luckily, in the late 90s, there were a lot of very well-compensated geeks. So we had plenty of customers. We got acquired by Rio. We made other things. We made a portable MP3 player, which had Ethernet as well, which may seem a bit strange. It was on the dock, but there we go. I spent time. We did several generations of products at Rio. I ended up presenting to Tony Fadell one time about software licensing, where they wanted to license our software stack. That didn't happen, but what did happen a year or so later was that Tony phoned me and said, "Can you come and work on this project? We can't tell you what it is." And so it's like, what, you want me to leave England and come to America, and you're not going to tell me what it is? And they said, yes. So I did, because I was feeling brave. And I signed extra NDAs when you arrive at Apple, working on a secret project like that. And it was the iPhone, and it was like, oh, I see now. And even back then, it seemed like an amazing thing technically. And it was, I'd actually been a smartphone junkie before the iPhone. I got through 5 phones a year. I would buy the latest one, then eBay it when I was disillusioned with how fast or big the screen was, or good the camera was, or how bad 3G was, or whatever. And I'd buy another one because that was going to be the one. And actually, some of my software was in the first Symbian phones, the IMAP client. That was my fault. I contracted for Symbian back then. Sorry, they condensed all the error messages into one, which didn't really help. So yeah, I worked on the iPhone, and the iPhone was great. But then when the App Store came along and people came up with these new uses, when we put the compass on there, we were just like, oh, I don't know what this is going to get used for, really. We couldn't really think of a use. And then the first app that really used it was one of the stargazing ones. And it's just like, oh yeah, now you know where to point to see stars. And it was just like, oh, that was incredible. And then you added the GPS and ubiquitous connectivity and all this stuff, more and more sensors, faster and faster connectivity, less and less battery. Unfortunately, I own the power spreadsheet for those things. We had a lot of fun, but when apps came along, it really the point of this thing became clear. And it was just like, oh, yeah, now I see. And now anyone else who was making anything with a battery, a communications interface, and a screen suddenly went, Apple's doing it cheaper than I can. So I had a Sonos system. I had a Sonos remote. Remember those, the big bulky remotes? And then everyone went, why are we using those? Anyway, so iPhone. After several generations, it got a bit samey making iPhones. I knew Matt from iPod. And I know there's some other iPod people here as well tonight. And he said, I'm working on this thing. I can't tell you what it is until you sign an NDA. And so I did. And it turned out to be unnamed at that time. And it was Nest. And I worked on the original hardware design for it and architecture and things like that. I spent many hours with Tony and Matt at pubs with the bench covered in thermostats, just critiquing everything and taking them apart. It was great fun. I didn't join, not full time, which was a bad mistake. Fiscally speaking, I don't think for the world or for Electric Imp, but it was a bit of a shock, shall we say. Great product though, and great guys there. But basically, I saw that they're building this thermostat, and it was like a great product. It was built in a very Apple-y way. It was like, we're going to make this beautiful device. It's going to work really well. We've really thought the user experience through, da-da-da-da-da. However, as an engineer, I'm going like, yeah, but how do you apply it to the next 10 things? I want my flying car. I've got a thermostat which talks on Wi-Fi. Great. Where's my talking toaster? Where's my control microwave? Where's all the other things? And what I realized was, looking at my WeThings bathroom scale, when I was sitting on my bathroom floor, automating my bathroom lights to show stock prices, as you do. I told you I'm an engineer. I was doing that, and I looked at my WeThings bathroom scale and went, hang on a second. All of the network devices I see, this was obviously pre-Nest launch anyway, all the network devices I see are made by network companies and who just decide they can make a device. It's like, oh, scale can't be hard. I'll make a scale. We do network stuff. Scales have got to be easy. Anyone who's had an X10 light switch will know that X10 can't make light switches. And it's just this problem that actually, what struck me was that what was needed was actually a platform where device vendors could actually get connectivity and build connected devices and let that data flow and work on the applications. Most of them end up, right now, getting bogged down with actually the mechanics of connectivity. And none of that stuff actually helps. I might have to show the next slides I've got. Oh, yeah, here you go. What the work they do there is their customers actually don't care. Does it work? Cool. They don't care how many man-years were expended building this networking stack, making stuff work reliably, making sure it's secure. Actually, that's better work for specialists. So the one-sentence answer of what we do is give APIs to physical things. So in terms of the explosion of connectivity, what we do is the connectivity bit. We don't try and do the intelligence, but the point is that it's much easier to do the intelligence if you can get the data reliably. And that's kind of, I think, the stage we're at right now with connected devices, is that there's a lot of work to make the connections reliable, get the data flowing. You can do lots of stuff in the cloud. There are very, very clever people who can deal with stuff at a semantic level. You give them the data, they can do incredible things. Ask anyone at Google. But you've still got to collect that data. And that's kind of like the last frontier with connected devices. So another way of saying it, we kind of feel we're like AWS for Internet of Things. No one now doing a web startup goes, hey, I'll go to Fry's and buy a rack. No one says that, partially because it's a big capital expense, doesn't gain them anything, it's a lot of trouble, then you've got to maintain it going onwards. When a disk drive fails, you've got to have someone to go and swap the disk drive. With AWS, it's all virtual. You just say, I'd like some servers, and they're there, and you can just ask for as many as you like, and whatever storage you like, and it all happens. And you just pay for what you use. Kind of the same with us. We provide this platform. It goes all the way from the embedded OS, all the way up to the cloud. Very scalable, very easy to integrate. We've had people who've shipped products 4 months after having a concept. So really, really very fast to iterate on this. And it really lets you think, what's my application? What's the value to the consumer? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to, improve efficiency of a building? Am I trying to make kids happy by sending them voicemails? Am I supposed, what am I doing? And that's kind of what we do. This is where we fit. This is the more technical side. I couldn't resist it because I'm an engineer, but I did have stuff. I said glue. There you go. There's a technical term there. Kind of manufacturers usually they're good at these things: firmware, electronics, mechanical, industrial design, as well as marketing and product definition and so on. What they're not generally good at is network stack and Wi-Fi hardware, securities, the applications are going to run on the network, how you manage firmware on devices in the field, and the glue to hook them to the higher level applications, the things which work with data. So analytics, sort of what do you call it, the IQ. It's how you make intelligent actions happen. Now, if you're trying to think about IQ stuff when you're trying to get packets through 2 layers of NAT and a firewall and this and that, you don't get very far because you're not abstracting your thinking enough. I think one thing that has sort of proven out over the last 5-10 years is that actually RESTful APIs are kind of a really efficient way to get data around, and people understand them, and people can work with them. And right now, there's a lot of, this is just very pragmatic. It's just like, okay, this may not be the best solution forever and ever and ever, but it works. And it works is a very good first step on the road for this stuff. There will be a lot of iteration beyond this point, but it works as a good start. So how we do that, we do it with virtual machines. We have a VM in a tiny device, a VM running in 128K RAM. It's really cute. That's loads of RAM actually coming from the 80s. That's like, but you get all this great stuff, hardware independence. You can move to new chips. You can do security as a service because we look after the operating system. And people do their applications, which means we can make sure every device on the platform stays secure without vendors having to be involved. We also have cloud virtual machines, which actually really Pico virtual machines. It's actually the embedded one, but running on a server. So you can run 20,000 on a single Amazon server. Those cloud virtual machines just give you the essential glue. You can implement whatever API you want. You want to talk to Twilio and send a text message when something happens? Cool. You want to poll the weather forecast from Weather Underground and use that to control the irrigation system? Can also do that. And you can do it all within our system. So it's kind of quite neat like that. And things we're in right now, some of these are upstairs. In fact, most of these are upstairs. Things like there's some quirky GE power strips. There's the ultimate man cave accessory if you're Canadian. It's a hockey light, which when your team, 5 minutes till your game, the team you support is playing starts, it will tell you to grab some buds. It's a Budweiser label product. And then when your team scores, it's obnoxiously loud and bright, and just like having your own hockey arena in your house. Guaranteed low spousal approval factor. You paid $150 for what? They've shipped many tens of thousands of these. Toy mail is really cute. I have small kids, like a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I have parents in the UK. And they can send voicemails directly to my kids, and my kids can reply directly back. These are actually real standalone internet devices. These are not smartphone-attached devices. These are nodes on the internet, with the doing a little audio in and out. And there's a Haiku, which is a very interesting product. It's a barcode scanner. You can scan things as you throw them away and add them to a shopping list. You can also speak. And it'll stream your voice to the cloud and do voice recognition in the cloud, which is, again, the applicable place to do voice recognition. It means you can evolve stuff much faster. You can add functions pretty much seamlessly after the product has been shipped. And obviously, you pair that with a delivery service, and you now have a new business model, which is kind of fun. So yeah, just exactly what I said. So there you go, stuff. But yeah, we're in lots of different places. There's lots of stuff coming out this year, which is powered by IMP. And towards the Kickstarter thing and the rapid product development, the point about it is if you can actually iterate on a product, you can make a prototype, prove it's valuable, demonstrate it, come up with a concept and a real, a value proposition for this stuff. It's amazing what you can do. A lot of people on Kickstarter have had the problem that they haven't got very far down that road because actually they pick a really big task. And it's really hard, and they've not done this before. I've done this before lots of times, and I know it's really hard, so I avoid Kickstarter. But it is a hard thing, but the more help, if you can build on a platform, it really does help. At least you don't have to worry about compatibility with Wi-Fi routers and security and NAT and stuff. So there's lots of people working on products using our stuff. And a lot of these are actually, there's interesting things, like the sort of sensors, door and window sensors. We have an elder monitoring company who's taking door and window sensors, which would be used for a security application. In the VM, they're loading their own code, and they're using them to monitor the activity of seniors in independent living, sort of campuses. So they can tell, like, did someone get to the kitchen by 8 a.m.? They're always in the kitchen by 8 a.m. Their data analytics backend knows this. Then it comes to 8:30, they're not in the kitchen. There's something strange. We'll just alert a caregiver to just check in on them. It's not intrusive, it's not cameras. It's just taking this data feed from possibly hundreds of data sources and mining the data, doing the things that big data people can do best, look for trends, analyze, compare to other people, that type of thing. Maybe they change medication, they visit the toilet more times, often in the night, whatever. And these are things we're actually shipping now, but they've done it without making hardware. And that's one of the other nice things. With this, a data manufacturer can go to like one of the ODMs that we use and go, I'd like some motion sensors. Maybe I'm going to put them in a conference room and see how busy each room is in a building and use it to reprioritize the meeting schedule or whatever. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's something completely different. But they can just go, I need to detect motion for my application. They can abstract away what was the hard bit, which is like I need to hardware and network and stuff. And they're all over the world, lots of spots. And there's none in the Maldives, though, which I'm quite upset about. I might have to go there and just power one on. But yeah, they've done pretty well. We actually shipped our first dev kits in August 2012. We're coming up to shipping almost 500,000 of them now. And one other thing, actually, we're very insistent on is we don't do, it's not like sign an NDA and get a dev kit for $300. These you can buy one-off for $25. Use it yourself. There's, you create an account and you can make your own thing. We have people making some very weird things. A lot of beer brewing applications and barbecue thermometers. But there are weird people. People are doing elephant tracking with it as well, which is quite strange. I didn't know there were Wi-Fi hotspots, but apparently the watering holes. You can just log stuff, and then they come back to a watering hole, and you download the data. Kind of cool. But there's a lot of interesting things happening with it. And really, we have no idea what they're doing with it because it's a platform, and we just go, until someone tells us, we don't know. They're just hitting our servers. They have privacy. We have no idea what they're doing. And that's it. So that's kind of what Electric Imp does. And so just a summary is we really, one problem at a time. For us, we're engineers, we're really good at making stuff connected reliably. So we're doing that, and it's actually amazing working with companies and people who have applications for the data. The data is really where the interest is. But as an engineer, you like going underneath and seeing all the workings and the cogs and stuff. But really, it's great enabling these applications. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are going to be coming over the next 2-3 years where people are really thinking differently about, if I had all this data, what would I do with it? And they can actually try it now. So thank you very much. And, no idea if that was 10 minutes.
All right, thanks very much. I'm going to ask that the rest of the panelists slowly introduce themselves, and then I believe in a moment we'll have up on the slide a phone number that you can text to start sending in your Q&A questions. I'll kick us off with a few questions, but then please start sending them in, and we'll get to your questions as well. So how about we start with you?
Sure. I'm Tejo Kote. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Automatic. And Automatic, we try to make the experience of car ownership better. And we make a small hardware device which connects to a standard port that every car sold since 1996 has. And that device connects to your smartphone and then to the cloud. And so now you have a connected car and a lot of the things that enables. And I imagine we'll talk more about that today, but that's what we do.
I'm Savita Srinivasan. I'm a director of strategy in IBM's venture capital group. And we work with the Global 100 top VCs, across the world. I spend a lot of time on Sand Hill, of course. And really what we're trying to do is find the automatics and, the Hugos of the world to figure out how they fit into IBM's strategy and IBM's business. So in fact, so if I may take a moment, really, IBM, primarily, I would say 15 years ago, IBM wasn't really engaged with the venture community. We were not working with the latest disruptors to see how to work with them, how to get them on our platforms, how to jointly take them to customers. So that's what my team does, and I'm one of the team members.
I'm Michael Yang. I'm a managing director with Comcast Ventures. We are a 15-year-old venture fund affiliated with Comcast Corporation, based here in Palo Alto. We are investors in companies relevant to this discussion, such as Jawbone, as well as iControl, and the whole Ambient IQ Internet of Things is a great market space that we're eager to kind of see what people come up with. Our view is it's extremely wide open. It's early innings, and what we will know about this market 3 years from now will completely dumbfound us if we were sitting here today. But happy to kind of share our perspectives on that. I will also say that Comcast Corporation is also very interested in kind of the Internet of Things. Those of you who are Comcast subscribers probably have heard of Xfinity Home Security, which is a new product offering that they've been taking to market in the last year or so. But obviously, smarter homes, more connected homes, and the enablement of value-added services there is something that they have a vested interest in as well.
Great, thank you. All right, Tejo, let's start with you. Hugo kind of just gave us a good background on one of the key building blocks that enables these types of devices. You guys, if I understand correctly, are building both the hardware and the software. Could you talk a little bit about why you decided to build hardware? And then what are the data points that you're unlocking, and kind of what is the intelligence that you're actually providing to me, the end customer?
Sure. So, Automatic is a startup that came out of research that my co-founder and I were working on at UC Berkeley. And the research project, was kind of tangential. What we were trying to do was understand how people drive and how do they move about and how do they use their cars and how do they make choices around the use of their cars versus public transit or walking or whatever it is. And our goal was to, gather as much information as possible and to learn more about that and to hold a mirror back and to give people insight about their own choices and hopefully modify behavior, right? And maybe possibly get them to ride the bike one extra time a week or something. And of course, as people accused us of, this was typical Berkeley research, right? And so, as we were trying to do that, we realized that most people simply don't realize, how much time and money they spend on their cars. And our cars are the most expensive computers that we own. And the average American family spends about $8,000 to $10,000 per year on their car. And about 70% of households own 2, 3, 4 cars, so they're spending a lot of money on their cars. And these things are big, expensive computers that aren't part of the network and connected. And as engineers, that kind of bothered us that there's all of this really valuable information which could make that ownership experience better, but people didn't have access to it. And so that's how we kind of started going down the path of trying to understand, okay, how can we unlock that information? How can we use that information about how people use the cars and what's happening inside the car to make that ownership experience better. And we started off as a smartphone-only application because we were just trying to collect behavior-based information, but soon we realized that, hey, without connecting to the engine computer, we can do a lot more if we do that. And so that's when we decided, okay, we need to go make hardware to do that, so that's what we'll do. And that's how we ended up creating our own hardware. And the decision to do our own hardware was interesting because we did try and use off-the-shelf hardware, but a lot of the things that we wanted to do involved great user experience. And one of the things that we decided early on was that if we really wanted to deliver the kind of experience that we were hoping to, you needed that tight integration between the hardware and the app on the phone and the cloud. And so that really required us to go build our own hardware. And it was not an easy decision because it's really, really challenging to go build high quality hardware that you sell at scale, and it becomes a whole different ballgame. But we thought that that was the right thing to do, and that's how we did it. But in terms of what the product actually does, once you connect to the car, you now have access to all kinds of information from the engine computer. And some of the things we do today include giving people more insight about how do they actually drive, and how much do they drive, how much money do they spend on their car, and what are the little things that they can do in terms of their style of driving, how can they change it to save up to a third of the amount of money they burn on gas. And even simple things like, why doesn't your smartphone know where your car is parked all the time, right? And so these are there's crash alert, which if you ever get into a crash, then it sends you help. And so there are a number of things that we do which are only enabled by that connectivity. And so going into the future, we really think of the possibility of that possibility space of what we can do. If you think of it in terms of, there are 250 million cars on the roads in the US, just in the US. The vast majority of them are not connected. What's going to happen if you bring all of those computers online, and what kind of an impact is that going to have on the $3 trillion automotive industry as a whole? And so that's the direction in which we're going.
So as a fellow startup guy, can you tell us maybe a little bit more about funding? How much money, how much capital do you guys need to actually build a device like this? As my short add-on.
So yeah, building hardware is more expensive than writing software, right? Yeah. And so we made, I guess, every mistake that a company could make when
we'll
go down
get to
that
those
path.
in a second.
So we started off as a software company, and the funny thing was, when we raised our seed round, we were still a software company, and we went and raised the seed round, and we soon decided that we should actually be a hardware company. And so the month after we closed our seed round, I sent an email to all of our investors, hey, you just invested in the hardware company. Okay, that was an interesting conversation, but everybody was supportive because nobody really complained, because we had a reasoning for why this is a much bigger opportunity and this is what we should really be doing. And but it also meant that there were a lot of constraints on the amount of capital that we could actually invest, but we managed to do it. And it does cost a lot more to take a hardware product to market, which you can actually ship at scale. But we did that, and that's where we are now.
All right, we'll learn more about some of those mistakes in a little bit. So Vito, when we were talking earlier before the talk tonight, we talked a little bit about Watson and the technology that you guys have been building there. One of the questions I've been thinking about is, how does IBM participate in this world of ambient IQ? How do you use the Watson technology? I think you have some experience and background there. Could you talk a little bit about that, and how you see big companies participating? Because we've got kind of two startups here, and I'd like to understand more about how you guys see yourselves maybe as in a platform role as well.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention in my introduction, one of the primary areas I work on is Watson, IBM's Watson technology. And really, some of you, as you may have heard, I would say 3 years ago is when we met the grand challenge of beating the reigning Jeopardy champion. Every 10 years or so, IBM Research will set these milestones called a grand challenge. In the 1998 timeframe, if you recall, we had the same thing with Deep Blue, beating Gary Kasparov in the chess game. So after we established that milestone at the T.J. Watson Research Center in New York, there was a decision to commercialize this technology. And that was really, in our mind, the advent of cognitive computing. And I'll say a little bit more about what we mean by cognitive, with the current Watson platform being the first of these technologies, cognitive technologies that we see as unfolding. And I think it directly ties really into this ambient IQ conversation that we're having here. I think bottom line is I don't need to recap the data deluge, the percentage of unstructured information that's being generated each day, and how much of that are we actually leveraging in an actual context of being useful, whether it's for the knowledge worker in an enterprise or for the consumer, right? So there's a lot of the problem that Watson solves is leveraging all the unstructured information that's generated with a lot of contextual ambiguity. The point here is, in every task we do, whether it's within the enterprise in a workflow or as a consumer, there's data that's coming in from multiple domains, multiple sources. And at each instance, at each boundary, there is contextual ambiguity. So Watson is essentially a natural language understanding, a question answering, and a reasoning engine. which you can insert into applications, into your solutions, in terms of, in a manner such that you can resolve contextual ambiguity and deliver that much more value, either to the process in an enterprise or to the end consumer. Right? And I mean, we have several examples I'm happy to share. We just announced our 3 partners last year when Ginny Mary opened up the platform. We have now a very sort of a 2-part strategy. Definitely we'll build our organic products. We have a series of Watson advisors, as we call them. And the founding principle really here is these advisors are meant to augment human judgment. They will be inserted into kind of a workflow, if it's in an enterprise context, if it's in a healthcare context. All of our early Watson products have all gained great traction in healthcare. Memorial Sloan Kettering, WellPoint, MD Anderson, all of those. Now we are broadening that. We're going into more of these direct-to-consumer sort of industries. And you'll see more of our partners building products in retail, in travel, in healthcare. So what I'm really eager to work on here is really work with Hugo and Tejo and see how, brainstorm on, are there Watson use cases in the context. I mean, I actually went and took a look at some of these features. I mean, if you're pushing out notifications and alerts on engine check, well, that's frankly an ideal position, point in that interaction where you want to insert a question answering and a dialoguing capability so you can give more targeted information, you can resolve ambiguities, and contextual notifications is going to be more actionable, likely for that end user. So it's a new technology. So what we're doing is we're working with partners one at a time with kind of the other IBM resources in place to really hone in on the use case. At the end of the day, it has to make business sense. This is not a GVIZ cool factor that we want here as an optional thing. This has to fundamentally transform your business. It has to fundamentally deliver an ROI that was not possible without Watson. So that's what we're looking to do in terms of working with partners here.
Great, awesome. Michael, what are the opportunities that you're looking for as you're kind of evaluating things in this space? As put your VC hat on, which the one you're wearing, and think about, if I'm pitching you in this space, how do you bucket me, and what do you kind of see as the opportunities that you're most excited about?
Sure. I mean, it's truly immense, and I think you got to look at it from the value chain perspective, and Hugo and you, Bill, all set it up kind of nicely. A lot of people will say, to Theja's point earlier, hardware is a scary thing for VCs, right? They think of it akin to kind of making, picking winners, like picking bets, like in games or films or something like that. It's lightning in a bottle. But, frankly, the state of the market is that you need to have more of a vertically integrated and controlled end-to-end solution to get the tipping point and the adoption that we all need. So, I think there are opportunities in hardware. They may be more fleeting, but hardware is a foundation to get going into the marketplace. Everyone wants to talk about data exhaust and all that kind of stuff, but until you have everything before that, you're really not going anywhere. So that's why if you look at it, what did Nest do? Nest started with hardware and was slowly building its value prop up the entire stack, and that was clearly something that Google saw value in. I think in the software, there's opportunities obviously in hardware, and if you can pick and create the best designed and functional and cost-effective device in your category, you have a shot. I think connectivity is also interesting. As Hugo pointed out, that has not been solved. You can go and try to connect dumb devices and dumb sensors that are just kind of out there already. Just think, there's infinitely more endpoints out in the network than there are new ones that are being created that are smart and connected. So there's an opportunity just to kind of retrofit and bring those folks into the new age. There are actually communications protocols wars right now. Is it going to be Wi-Fi? Is it going to be Zigbee? Is it going to be Z-Wave? Is it going to be Bluetooth? So there's a lot of people battling and making bets on entire stacks from chips up what that's going to be. So one can choose as an investor to kind of play in that particular game. If you move then towards middleware, I would say you're going to bring down a lot of data. So you have to figure out how to transport data, you have to figure out how to store data, how to manipulate it, get it from here up in the cloud to other places, be it software or other systems. So we like to say, where's the TIBCO in this business? You know, TIBCO is a great message bus in the financial services transaction space, but you almost need that in the whole ambient IQ Internet of Things. Is there one? Is there many? Is it a winner-take-all thing? I think that is still to be seen. But I think, you know, there's interesting companies trying to play in that space right now. And then I think as you continue to move along, you get into the smarts and the intelligence, and this is where rules engines start to apply. You know, if you're doing something in the home, you know, there's certain logic and rules that apply to kind of trigger things. If you're doing something in healthcare, if you're doing something in automotive, you know, these are all going to be vertical specific. They have to have very specific use cases that are being applied to it, and they will ultimately support the applications and the user experiences that we as consumers will be able to leverage. I would argue there's even innovation to be done over there. Everybody thinks it's an app. Well, how many apps are we going to have? You know, am I going to have an app that locks my door? Am I going to have an app that turns on my washing machine? Am I going to have an app that, you know, checks my camera on my nanny? Like, it's just, you can't have that many things. So I think what is interesting is, will there be a war on the UX level where all these triggers, these alerts, these notifications really get aggregated and presented in kind of your live stream? You know, so I would point to Google Now, even some of the stuff that you guys are looking at down there. You know, where are you in the course of the day? Are you in front of your work PC? Are you in front of a TV screen? Are you in front of your refrigerator? Are you in front of the dashboard of your car? You know, we don't really need more displays and more UX environments. We have them already. So how do you intersect the notifications into kind of where you are today? So, you know, that's another interesting opportunity. I'd say outside of all this, you know, what the ecosystem needs is things like very low-tech, service-oriented manual labor efforts. So I'm talking about installation, right? Is everybody sophisticated at putting DropCam in their house? Probably in this audience, but you go somewhere else, they're maybe not. You know, who are you going to trust to come into your home or into your vehicle and actually do things? You probably never thought about this. What about customer service? You know, customer service, let's be honest, is rarely the first thing that a startup thinks about when they're kind of resource planning their own kind of company. But there's other organizations, call-centered, monitored services that potentially get into that. So, you know, we often joke it'd be great if there was a great third-party sales force, a great third-party installer, a great third-party customer service organization that wants to allow these guys to do what they're really good at, and they handle all the gnarly stuff. And think about billing. Who wants to do billing in this world, right? So
Actually, IBM does.
okay, well, great. There you go. There you go.
So, yeah.
But that's why I say we're so early in this game, and there's just a wide ocean of opportunities in front of us.
Hugo, maybe could you follow on that a little bit and talk, what are the commonalities that you see across your customers? Is there trends that you see there? What are people building? I know you showed us some really cool examples, but kind of what are they trying to do?
So the stuff I showed you was kind of the stuff which shipped first. Consumer stuff gets to market fastest. I mean, that's just how it works. There's stuff from companies I can't talk about, which is much more industrial, much more infrastructure. Some very cool applications there. Places which, you know, infrastructure will be installed for, you know, 10 to probably 30, 40 years. And they're looking that, like, you know, they've never had any way of getting the data from this. And there's huge amounts of information they can pull from there. Some of those are really interesting because it actually changes a lot of their business model. I mean, and this is not an example. This is an example we did at Series A. We made a mousetrap with an imp in it. So, you know, the joke was we built a better mousetrap, which got laughs generally. But, you know, if you think about that in the context of, say, Terminix, if you have connected mousetraps, you then, you know, your operatives going out servicing these mousetraps are not going checking empty mousetraps. They're only going to where there is a mouse down event. I wouldn't send a mouse down event to a text to a thing, but you know, you look at that, and I think it's a lot of the really interesting ones are where it actually changes the business model. It's not just efficiency; it enables companies that have worked one way for 50 or 100 years to work completely differently. And you know, the opportunities it opens up there huge. I mean, just on the mousetrap thing, and this is flogging a dead mouse or whatever. But you look at there's mousetraps, and typically they kill the mouse. If you're having a humane mousetrap, having one that can tell you the mouse is in there is essential because you want to release the mouse as soon as possible. And there are things. You could have a picture of the mouse and thumbs up, thumbs down button. The Roman Emperor version. But we thought about this a lot, possibly in the pub. But I think the really interesting is where the data, the data really enables different business models, and a lot of people are coming to this realization. We have a lot of startups who have completely different ideas for products and services, which are completely based on connectivity, and they have this couldn't exist before connectivity. But we also have the older companies who are looking at this, and there are people going like, yeah, but all we need to know is this within a day, and then it changes the way our business works. And I think those are really intriguing, and it's actually great being in a position of having a platform because you get to see all this stuff, and it's exciting helping it happen. But I think the most exciting things are data and business model things. I mean, it's things which were fundamentally not possible before. You can do stuff like I can turn my lights on from across the room, and it's just like kinda. I can walk as well. So I think there's a lot of things which are kind of. They're not needed. They aren't actually. They're making things a little bit more convenient. They're not making things better. I think making things better is a good target.
Good answer. This is for everyone, but maybe we'll start with Thijo. Is how do you see Ambient IQ going mainstream, right? Like you have this device that I saw upstairs. It looks like a great device at $99, I think. And now I have to install it in my car. That to me seems like it's an early adopter product, which is great. But how do we turn this into a mainstream product, right? Like how is this just going to be the default for the next car that I buy? I bought my last car in 2006, so 2 years, I guess. Maybe I'll get a new car.
Yeah, so this is obviously something we think a lot about, and any device company which is trying to do something that we are trying to do, I think, has to go through that classic technology adoption life cycle, right? You can't just jump into the mainstream market, and the product that we have built today kind of recognizes that, and it is targeted at the early adopter crowd, and the crowd that loves the quantified self and the story and the message that we are giving them. And so over time, the goal obviously is to tell a story which resonates with that larger market. And as a startup, you always have constraints around, and you don't want to go after a market that is so large that you simply can't serve it, right? You want to start small, you want to hone the product, you want to learn, make mistakes, learn from them, and you gradually expand out from there. And my view about that is that it will happen over time as long as you are building something that people actually want to use, and you're adding value to them in their lives. And so that's how I think about it.
Sure. I guess I kind of like piggybacking on what Michael said earlier, right? This concept of installers seems right to me, right? Like you've sold me, right? I'm able and could probably figure out how to install these devices, but right, I don't think you would get my parents. And my dad loves cars, right? But I still am not convinced that he'd figure that out. Hopefully he's not here. But so I guess to me, maybe someone else on the panel as well has thoughts on like how are we going to get this so that this is just the default operation, right? Like the same way that 5 years ago, right? I guess we weren't all smartphone users then, but now today when I go to a store, I get a smartphone, even if I don't really want one, right? Like that's just, my grandma has a smartphone. She doesn't want one. She just wants to call me or my dad, right? But that's just the phone that they offer. You can't get that old Nokia, which was a beautiful phone, but no more.
Just to add to that, I also, with Automatic, we don't wake up in the morning and think of ourselves as a hardware company per se. So
Sure.
as I said, we started off as a software company, right? And so hardware is, as far as we're concerned, a means to an end. And that's because there are just so many cars on the road now, and once a car comes onto the road, it stays on the roads for about a dozen years, right? And so for the next decade to 15 years, nothing much is going to change because 15 million new cars are going to be added to the roads every year over the next, forever. So, the way we think about it is the real value is in that ambient IQ, the intelligence and the experience that we deliver to the user. And as that market transitions, it may not be hardware, it may be something else. So we're just focused on delivering that experience.
Smart. Others?
Sure. So, I mean, if you really want to go mass, I think it's push and pull, right? So if you're going to push, you need distribution partners. It could be the auto OEMs and the like. If you're in the home space, it could be a telco, a cable operator, a security company, people who have mass distribution and access into kind of the endpoints that you're trying to target. I think the other thing that's still trying to be figured out is pull. What is the value prop for any of these kind of connected devices? We're all human beings. At the end of the day, you tap into some very core principles. So you can sell on fear, and you can market fear, and people will buy on fear. That's things like home security, it's safety kind of devices. So, why is a smoke detector, and cameras and locks and all that work? Because you're selling on fear. You could also try to sell on cost. So maybe that's the thermostat. Maybe that's some other energy automation kind of things in the home as well. But you better be able to substantiate that there's real dollar savings for people to shell out money to kind of do that. And, so on and so forth. You can kind of walk through these things. But I think you have to tap into something innate and primal if you're going to get the pull. In the meantime, you're really trying to push first with the early adopter crowd before you kind of topple the mainstream.
All right. I think we're about to start some user questions, so please, or audience questions, not user questions. Sorry, I'm building product all day. I've been thinking about user problems. So please send some more in. I will have one more, and then we'll get to some of the audience. So Hugo, maybe you can start. In your presentation, you talked about some of the mistakes and some of the things that you're helping people building on top of your building blocks, the things that they're avoiding. Can you talk about some of the mistakes that you guys have made, what you've learned, and how we as future builders of these types of devices
Hopefully didn't make too many mistakes, but that was more because we've been building stuff a long time, so we knew what to avoid. And I say, building hardware is kind of hard. You learn a lot by doing. We made lots of mistakes on the car MP3 player, but it didn't end in any recalls, so that was good. And I think you look at stuff from the bright side. Especially as most of the stuff was shipped to the US from the UK, and FedEx is quite expensive. I think the stuff that we help people avoid is really the reinvention of the wheel. There's reinvention of the wheel on designing an antenna, on a good RF layout, on wireless drivers, on how you deal with buggy routers, because there's a lot of buggy routers out there. There's all bits like that, and I think we help with that. A lot of that is stuff which people wouldn't have got over on the path to their product, unless they're very, very tenacious and have a lot of resources. But I guess that's helping. It isn't what we help them with mechanics, and I think the hard bit of any product is actually the inspiration and what it's going to do, who it's going to help. And I think with that, it's good that our stuff lets people think about that more. And they can make a workable prototype in a week instead of there's maybe it's not a production thing, but they can make something that they can give to someone and go, how does this work for you? Is it just me who thinks this is great, or do you think it's great too? And I think prototyping and iteration is more and more with 3D printing and all this easy access to CAD software, cheap prototyping, PCBs made cheaply places. You can order components, all this stuff like that, and Electric Imp as a platform to build on. All that stuff is really meaning that people. It used to be the case, you'd have to have a really clear vision. I'm making this product because it was so expensive, and you had to put tens of thousands of dollars into making a couple of prototypes. It was a very, very high risk. Now the risk is reduced because you try something, it doesn't quite work. You tweak it a bit, try something else. And I think Electric Imp, we see ourselves almost part of that rapid prototyping thing, that people can actually change the shape of what they're doing until they get something which really works. And it's going to work better, and then with us they can go to production with it, which is great. But I think we help people both with the prototyping and the production and the tough bits of engineering.
Sure.
There's still loads of engineering to do, and still loads of company stuff to do. It's still not easy making hardware, but hopefully it's several years less time.
Can you also tell us maybe some of the tweaks that you've had to make internally at Electric Imp over the past, I actually don't know how old you guys are.
We were founded in May 2011, and we shipped in end of July, last day of July 2012. So actually we're still shipping Rev 1 of the PCBs. I'm very proud of that. It's actually, it's just, it's like we didn't have to revise anything at all. But that was really because I had a lot of, when you're in the beginning of a startup, it's amazing how much time you have at the beginning when you haven't got a product yet and there are no customers yet. It's amazing how much time you have. And so I just sat there and just worked on this thing, just perfecting, nudging traces a fraction of a millimeter and stuff and making sure it was all really good. So we didn't make, I mean, in previous ones, we made some issues, we made mistakes. And like some of the mistakes I think common people make when they're making hardware is they go, oh, we can't do any software until the hardware's ready. That's a very common problem. Everyone goes, well, we can't possibly write this code. And it's just like, well, actually, why? It'll just run on a Windows box or a Linux box. Or, yeah, it hasn't got the hardware, but you can get 90% of the bugs out before that turns up. And I fell into that trap, definitely. And I was like debugging stuff with a serial port. It took like 3 minutes to upload the code. And it was just like, hang on, why am I doing this? This is, afterwards you look back and go, this is stupid. But people still do it. I have got lots of other sort of strange, if people sort of find me online or on our forums and stuff, I give out sort of electrical design advice on our forums because I can't help myself. I think it's great. More and more people are trying this stuff now. People are emboldened to do this. Spark Fun and the Maker movement and the Maker Faire and stuff really make people want to make tangible stuff. And they want to try stuff, and they want to fail, and it's great because failure can actually, it's not like a software, it just crashes. Things can go bang. It's a lot more fun, slightly more dangerous, but a lot more fun.
At Automatic, what have you guys learned? And where have you guys failed?
I think the biggest mistake we made was, when you want to bring a hardware product to market, optimizing for the cost of the device. Maybe when you're a consumer product that you want to sell, you want it to be as low cost as possible so that you have the flexibility to price it, or if have more margins or whatever it is. And I remember wasting a lot of time trying to find the right component, the best price. And you call a Broadcom, like, who the hell are you guys? They don't even want to talk to you, right? So you're going to sell some 100, whatever, thousands of devices or whatever it is. That's what they assume. And so there was a lot of spinning of cycles that happened at that stage. So, and we learned that lesson. And at some point it doesn't matter, right? So it doesn't matter if your product is 30% more expensive, 40% more expensive. Getting to the answer as quickly as possible. Have you built something that people really want to use? Right? Like that is the only thing that matters when you're initially building a product that you're taking to market. And use a module, use more processors than you need to, or do whatever you have to get that product into people's hands and answer the question, is this something that more than just your family and friends want to use?
Right? That's actually one of the points that I have said in previous talks. I didn't mention it. It's absolutely do not optimize for cost at the beginning. Make something that works.
Yep.
If it's successful, then you can worry about saving a couple of bucks down the road. But if it doesn't work, it's never going to be successful. So.
Exactly. And we learned that lesson the hard way. And it's interesting because we were founded in May 2011, and we got our product to market in March of 2012. And maybe we could have done it 4 or 5 months earlier if we hadn't gone through that process of learning. But that was the biggest mistake we made and learned a lesson from.
Great. Thank you for sharing. All right, we're going to start with some audience questions, so continue to send them in. The first question is, how do we monetize all of this? Talk about your business model. Who wants to start?
I can start. So we have a simple business model. We sell a product, people give us money, and that's it, right?
Let me add to that, right? I was wanting to sort of make some comments on how does an IBM, how does IBM work with Automatic? How does IBM work with Electron, right? So ultimately, although traditionally you wouldn't think of us in the same sentence as with them, the idea is ultimately I would bet you want to sell to BMW. I would bet you want Ford as your customer. I bet you want all these brands, right? Likewise, Hugo, you probably want the utilities companies or various some of these. I was just talking to one of your colleagues. You want all the properties of Disney using your devices, right? To track consumers, have individual profiles, push just the right content to them. You want your property, your Cinemark using all of your devices, right? In all their sort of equipment on all their web properties and otherwise, not web properties, the actual properties. So the point here is all the people that you would at least some of them that you would want to sell to invariably are going to be IBM customers. And our customers look to stay on the edge of that, the push and the pull that you talked about, Michael. They're looking to adopt and embrace the latest disruptions, what's relevant to them, what adds value. And that's where IBM really comes in, because we want to be that trusted data integration provider. We want to be the trusted system integrations advisor. And so we kind of have our own data platforms, but we are no longer only Blue. We sort of work with the entire ecosystem. We work with all partners that make sense and deliver value to our clients. And so that integration platform is where an IBM would come in terms of working with these startups to deliver value to our clients.
You go.
We make stuff and sell it too. Right now we make hardware. We tried to speak to, well, we actually did get Broadcom to speak to us, but only by cornering someone at the Nest launch party. I got one of the VP's business cards and then bugged him occasionally.
Why is that important? I don't.
Broadcom they make great chips, but they're very hard. They're very hard as a small company to deal with big companies. If you're a startup, you don't exist, pretty much. But so we had.
Sorry, one more time. What do you want to do with Broadcom?
What do I want to do? Oh no, we use their chips.
Okay.
They have great chips. We love their chips. So business model, right? Yeah. So we sell some hardware. We designed a wireless module. We designed our own one because no one else would do it for us. But actually, later this year, we have a large manufacturing partner who is well known in the wireless module space, who is now making one to our design. Because actually, we're not adding value in that part. Our value is the operating system. So we're moving to an OS license that people pay for the device, and then there's service. Because when it connects to our cloud, there are VMs running on our cloud. There's value there. So for us, it's an ongoing part, which isn't necessarily shared with the end customer. I mean, there's always a cost to run a server for someone to connect to. So there's two parts. It's kind of like a little bit up front, and then depending on what you're doing, if you need HIPAA compliance, you need a different grade of service with end-to-end encryption and more different bits in it, and so on. So it's fairly a normal sort of platform as a service type business model. But right now, there are boxes go out the door as well.
Got it. Easy. All right. Next question. What happens when you marry omniscience and omnipotence in a bad actor? Google plus Watson plus Bots and Dynamics, which Google owns 2 of those, plus Glock. Like a Terminator, I guess, is the question. This is a tough one. No one wants to say that this is what you're building secretly?
No.
Maybe rephrase, how do we protect ourselves from enabling technology that has both data and the ability to complete actions from accidentally killing myself? For a car, right? If I give you the ability to drive my car and you crash it and I die, I'm not happy.
You're largely irrelevant to that.
Well, I'm dead, but my mom's not happy.
So, coming back to what we do and thinking of that, I think part of the reason why our business model is users pay us and we provide them with services to keep us honest, right? And so, the data that comes out of your car is incredibly valuable to lots and lots of companies and the automotive industry as a whole, because this is an ecosystem which is like $3 trillion in size just in the US, and it's an industry and a big part of the economy that has never been connected. So you think of a part of the automotive industry and they really want access to that data, and so I think it's also about self-discipline. What is your relationship with your user, right? If you set up the way you think about your business and your incentives are aligned with doing the right thing for your users, then that's a good way to make sure that you don't create Terminator or whatever. I don't know what that was, but
sure, I guess. But think about bugs in software, right? Like I think the Terminator maybe is too far out, right? We're not building weapons here, but you are building something that connects into my car. And I think last summer I saw a really interesting video where people were controlling their Prius through, I think, the port that you guys connect through.
And that is one of the big reasons why we decided it's going to be a big pain, but we're going to go make hardware because security is that important, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to open up a wireless vector of attack into your car through Bluetooth, through a device that's connected to a completely insecure network, because cars aren't, they're completely open networks.
Right.
And so the reason we decided to create our own device is because how do you make every byte of data that flows from the car to the device, to the phone, to the cloud, like verifiably secure end to end, and those are exactly the kinds of criteria that led to us making the decision that it doesn't matter how hard it is, we have to go create our own hardware and consider all of those possibilities. And a car is an extremely safety critical machine and device.
Right.
You don't want to mess with that.
And Hugo, as a platform, how do you guys protect us? And then how do you prevent your customers from saying, you know what, I actually have to own this all the way through so that I can reliably know that this is secure?
So, yeah, I mean, protecting people, actually, when it's action, we work at a data level. So we don't know when a bit goes from 0 to 1 what that means. It could mean it releases the axe, which swings down something.
Sure.
We have no idea. I mean, that's, you're working, it's like it's saying, do AT&T know what's, actually NSA do, but yeah. But there's some extent it's data. It's the data network. Data passes through data networks. It's packets. Our job is to transmit them securely so they can't be intercepted. They're verifiably from a particular source and go to a particular destination. And that's kind of all you can do as a platform for data transport. Some people say they want to own servers. They want to say that our device must connect to our server. The reasons for that kind of vary. Sometimes it's like, well, our server won't go down. It's like, well, why? Why, our business is keeping our servers up. How come you're going to be better at it when you're actually making washing machines? There's some sort of answers they give like that, which are kind of interesting. But I mean, we do have opportunities for people to keep stuff completely secure through there. There are good reasons for stuff going through our cloud in terms of device management, and we can actually offload a lot of the work that vendors have to do in terms of load balancing and failover and things like that. And there's good network structural reasons why people should do it. Not everyone is convinced, but they don't tend to ship as much stuff.
You get people started.
We get. I mean, there's always the argument like, oh, well, people use your stuff and then they'll go and build their own. If they're being successful, what's the reason to build their own? Sure. This is you can concentrate on your next generation product that's going to sell 10 times as many, as opposed to re-engineering something which works perfectly. So, yeah.
Great. Michael, is Ambient the next revenue source for telcos like Comcast as TV revenue drops off? And then maybe how can you talk about this with Xfinity and some of the stuff that's going on around those packages?
I think it's far too early to say that. I would say, I'll go back and I'll tie this to the business model kind of question that was asked earlier. I think I started off by saying the state of the market today we see is mostly device-centric stuff, and either you're selling a device at a high enough price that you have enough margin in it to sustain yourself, which we'd argue probably nobody has at this point in the market because it's still early days, where you're selling your product, namely a device, at a loss, and you hope to get it back either in a software subscription model or potentially a data model or an advertising model down the road. So I think those are the ones that are going to be kind of interesting, where you subsidize the device, kind of like the phone companies have done with wireless plans today, but they make it up on the back end either through other revenue streams. I think people will look to existing business models to apply to kind of this whole new ecosystem. That could be a telco, it could be a cable operator, it could be other device companies. And I think the other thing we haven't talked about today, back to my comment on push, retail channels are really interesting. So you have Home Depot, you have Lowe's, you have Best Buy, you have traditional brick and mortar players that are not only moving physical product, but also getting into service lines themselves, because they also know selling discrete products on shelves is a crappy business model at the end of the day that's highly seasonal. So they're trying to evolve into more annuity and subscription-like revenue models. And this whole category, we think, will play into those actors as well.
Great. Savita, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we see exactly that. I mean, retail is a big sector for IBM. I think we know we have the top, global 100 retailers. And we see exactly this, more and more of the product, they're looking for value-add subscription-based services, and a very interesting phenomenon, which is really the convergence of the online with the sort of brick and mortar, right? So the latest strategy I hear is BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store. Why? Because you've got all this excess inventory. And so you've got this really cool startup that I'm working with right now. They crowdsource the drivers for your Macy's and for your Nordstroms. They optimize inventory based on your location and which of the stores has excess inventory. And they're trying to bridge the online world with the brick and mortar.
Cool. All right, next question. Hugo, why didn't Google buy you? Why did they buy Nest?
So
you seem to be kind of the more
why
generalized
I cry myself
platform.
to sleep every night. No, I don't know. I mean, I think I have a personal opinion, which is probably Tony's a very valuable guy for Google to have. Google have some things they made which, anyone remember the Nexus Q? The big
Never
round
launched.
thing? Yeah, what kind of did, I think they gave the first 1,000 or so away. No one ever paid for it. And I think that there are things. Google is an incredible company in many ways, but I think having the person with enough power at the top to go like, that's a silly idea. Let's not do that. Doesn't always happen. I was at Google for 2 weeks. Full disclaimer.
There for 4 years.
I joined Google, and the day after I joined, they announced Android at Home. And things I just filed patents for some Electric Imp stuff. I went, hang on, this could be competitive. I better leave. So it was a very short stay at Google. But I mean, I don't know. If they're looking for a platform, I think we're the best platform. But if they're looking for a team that can build incredibly, and this is a compliment, Apple quality hardware, that can engineer it and design it and actually follow every last detail through, and make those type of products, they did a good job. There's Nest is a finely tuned machine for making these things, just like Apple is.
How do you guys think about acquirers, right? Like, to me, when I look at the market, I'm not convinced that we're going to see Apple or Google or Facebook acquire someone like Electric Imp, especially not Facebook. But I do think that there are a variety of other non-traditional in the tech community acquirers that would be interested in both what you guys are doing.
I mean, I think for Electric Imp, there's some interesting things. You look at people who are not product makers, who are into infrastructure. You look at people like Cisco. You look at people like Amazon, even. People who provide trusted network providers to this, who actually, they don't have anything in this space. This type of thing actually fits well with their business model. It will leverage other parts of their business. They get economies on this, and they're a trusted name. Obviously, being a startup, you have the issue that if you were backed by a very big company, then more people would engage with you because you just go, oh, well, they're going to be around forever now.
Sure.
Doesn't always work with Google. I had a Google Power Meter and I got turned off.
I still have mine.
It just doesn't report to anywhere anymore. So yeah, I mean, we don't tend to think too much about acquirers. I mean, I think this market is very new. We've got a lot of work to do here. There's going to be there's a huge amount of devices to be connected, and I think we have enough to concentrate on thinking about it as opposed to thinking about acquirers. I don't think Nest were thinking about acquirers either. I think it just came along, and someone offers you $3 billion, you probably don't say no.
Sounds about right. All right. Will the intelligence, the IQ, be centralized or distributed? And I think this, maybe we can start with Watson as kind of one of the influences there. And I think maybe the other question I have around this to build on the audience question is, I think that we're going to start to see data silos, right? Like automatics building up your own data. And I know that you and I have talked previously about some of the APIs that you're thinking of opening up. But for me as a consumer, right, like I want the great, maybe more Apple-like experience, right, where everything is tied together. How do you see this happening as we're talking about ambient IQ and intelligence? How is that going to connect together?
I'm not sure, the solving the data silo problem, that's exactly the business we are in, for example, right? And so let me give you an example. I think today, each of these domains, I mean, I know I was talking to Hugo, so in each of these devices, you've got a VM on the device, you've got a VM on the cloud, and there's data, processing computation that's happening on the cloud, and so you've got your proprietary cloud with with sort of your data and your intelligence over that. But guess what? You're serving up that intelligence using your RESTful APIs. And that's the business everybody is in. This is a world where all the intelligence on top of the data wants to be interoperable and, through these RESTful APIs, such that you can serve a broad class of applications. So even if there are these silos, each of them are sort of, opening up their platforms with this common API so that any app that wants to sit on top can take advantage of all these data sources. So we are seeing, it's not, the whole world is not integrated. Clearly, there are domain-specific sort of, clouds and, APIs that are serving that domain. But depending on the problem you're solving, we are definitely seeing a layer where data platforms are coming together, perhaps not the repository itself, not the corpus itself. Take Watson. For each of the partners that we stood up, each one has their own database. They have their relational database, they have their NoSQL, everything, things are running on Amazon, on Google, they're running all over the place, and there's a little piece that's running behind the firewall, right? Something that has to touch their back-end, ERP systems and so on. But when they want the Q&A Watson API, they just use our RESTful, service. So I think that's the layer at which we are seeing the data platforms connect such that we can serve up to the applications.
Got it. Hugo, is this something that you guys want to get into, right? As you build out more of the services, today you sell me a chip and I know that it will successfully connect my devices, but at some point you say, hey, we've actually got these 10,000 customers with their data sets and they're all shared now.
So we have some plans for semantic operations and that type of thing. But I think actually, to answer I don't know if the question is asking really about distributed intelligence. It's actually, in the connected devices realm, it's like, does every device talk directly to every other device and make up their own decisions?
Answer both of those questions.
I kind of think that one is unlikely in the short term, just because it's very hard. And you think of the problem that debugging the problem behind someone's firewall, that some devices are chatting and don't get on, or there's a software incompatibility, and it's just like, okay, I can't actually, it's not actually a tractable problem. I think the intelligence and the processing will be distributed, but will be distributed around the internet. It won't be distributed between devices. I think the devices will connect to things with more processing power, and then there'll be much faster connections, much more power thrown at it, much more. People will write stuff in Python because they can, and it does something useful on the data, and it doesn't matter how slow or fast it is because it's running on a big computer. And there's a lot of that which will happen to iterate on a solution. So that's why I think it will be distributed, but not at a node level, I don't think. But in terms of trying to make semantic knowledge, trying to make actionable insights, I guess you could say, for the ambient IQ stuff, happen. We have some ideas on that, which we're not implemented yet, so we're not talking about them that much. But I think
Give us a hint.
No, because I get myself into trouble like that. But there's some ideas, and there's lots of people who have good ideas in that thing. And I think a lot of the time it's going to be iteration. It's a new field. People don't quite know how this is going to work. They've got to try. And you can't try without a lot of data, so you need lots of connected devices. So to some extent, there are specialized applications. They can do this already because they've got 10,000 sensors and they can mine this stuff. But other ones, how a home how it works, how a commercial building works, how you can sense where people are and where HVAC is needed, and all these security and things like that. A lot of it is just, it actually has to be tried and iterated on, and people aren't doing that yet because they haven't got connected devices. But when they do, they will.
Michael?
So I'd look at the healthcare market as a harbinger for what kind of more home and other settings could become. And it's really fragmented, and they are data silos, and you might have aggregation at a presentation layer, but definitely not at a logic or anything kind of more value added on the intelligence side. So if I'm a runner, I have my Runkeeper. If I'm a cyclist, I have Strava. If I'm trying to count steps, I have Jawbone, and so on and so forth. Each of them has their data sets, they have apps, they are making their data exportable, or you can consume it as a third party from a read perspective, but there is no read-write kind of going on in a lot of these situations. So where does that leave you? You, the individual, are the master controller and the one that has to distill across all of that. There are people who are trying to build software companies to do that, but there's just not enough there yet to kind of make that successful. I would argue in some of these other environments, You might, right? Because to connect a light bulb, a lock, a camera, a thermostat, a smoke detector, a sump pump, each in and of itself is not as compelling, I would argue, as running or cycling or some of these other things in healthcare. So you could see a future where something that does pull all that together and does actually seamlessly automate, connect, and kind of control your home would be able to materialize, and also in other verticals as well. So I'm actually more hopeful in kind of a non-healthcare setting than I was when we were really looking at the healthcare setting.
Great. All right, I think this is the last audience question, and the question is, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs in this space? And I'd love to get an answer from everyone here. Hugo, put it on you.
First. Try lots of things, I guess, and do it cheaply. And yeah, don't optimize too fast. I think really it's just trying lots of things. You need to experiment. Everyone, you think you have a great idea, and it evolves over time. And if you put too much effort in too early into one direction, it can be disheartening when it doesn't take off. But a lot of it is just trying stuff. I mean, that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur. No one can tell you that this is the wrong thing to try.
They can tell you. They will tell you.
Okay, they do tell you. But you can believe in something, and it's going to go from your mind to the real world, and that's just incredible freedom, and all the tools available to you now to do that are just amazing. Everything from Kickstarter to online IDEs to there's hardware, there's software, there's free services which say, hey, the startup account is free, and you get all this stuff. All this stuff that you can actually work with, GitHub, things like that. It's just great. There's all this which wasn't there. 10 years ago, you had to go and buy MSDN, spend your $600 on Visual C or whatever to do anything. And now it's just like, you don't have to spend any money. You just need to hang out in a Starbucks with a Chromebook and you're golden. So I think, that gives you a lot of freedom. And I think that the bar is higher, though. People want really good stuff now. Sure. So, yeah.
I guess the biggest lesson that we have learned is that just the only thing that matters, I think I've said this already, is to build something that somebody wants to use, right? And just try and hone in on that and be laser sharp focused is the single most important thing. And of course, if you're a founder, don't pay yourself for as long as possible. Don't run out of money.
Be cheap.
That might seem like obvious advice, but it happens more often than you think. Don't run out of money, and that's important.
I'd take it further along in the cycle. I'd say when you're at a point when you want to scale, you've got an in-market product, you've got a target market, addressable market, you're going after that, and the next step is growth or scaling, customer acquisition. I think, I would, examine the strategy for scaling and go-to-market carefully. Pick your partners, pick your channel partners or strategic go-to-market partners carefully. They can go a long way in terms of helping young startups with their reach.
I agree with all this. I just add a couple more things. One is this market's going to take a while, so you got to have a long-term perspective on it. I think you also have to be super passionate about it. A lot of people are saying, hey, just because Google bought Nest, there's all this new supply of entrepreneurs who want to be in this market. I mean, if it's not a genuine, heartfelt kind of journey that you want to go down, then don't, because it'll be figured out, I think, rather quickly. And then I think the last thing is, hire good people, right? Like, so much is really about your co-founders, your team members, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the adage is, again, given how evolving this market's going to be, you really need to have the best people with you to help kind of figure this out.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you to all of the panelists.
So.